Thank you, Madam Speaker. May I just confirm that it's 20-minute speaking time? Much obliged. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker.
The first person responding. So I'll give you 30 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. What a novelty and yet what a tragedy at the same time. Madam Speaker, I will exercise the entitlement as the first responder to the 30 minutes, and I thank you for allowing me that clarification. Madam Speaker, it gives me great pleasure to join in this debate. I must say that it is certainly not a pleasure to be in this chamber with only the government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago present. And I'll say why. Madam Speaker, the bill before us now is the product of two joint select committees having sat back to back for nearly 3 going on 4 years. The bill before us, the Tobago Island Government Bill, is a product which originated from the 2016 deliberations of the Tobago House of Assembly. Now, Madam Speaker, permit me to put it in this regard. Currently in Section 29 of the Tobago House of Assembly Act, the Tobago House of Assembly has the capacity to produce bills for consideration. They don't have that which this government and which the Joint Select Committee of 2 parliaments back to back, they don't have the power to make laws. Because the power to make law for the peace, order, and good government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago is entrenched in Section 53 of the Constitution as the power of the Parliament. Section 22 of the Constitution sets up that the Parliament is the President of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, the House of Representatives, and the Senate. The 2 joint select committees meeting in the period 2018 right up to 2021 fashioned the view coming from legislative proposals in the context of bills generated by the island of Tobago that Tobago should have legislative capacity. And that legislative capacity was born out of the deep desire to give the people of Tobago the equality of status to Trinidad and Tobago when considered between the 2 islands. After all, isn't it fair, reasonable, desirable, altruistic that Tobago ought to have its own island government, its own legislature, its own power to borrow? Shouldn't Tobago have the advantage of a further and immediate access to $1.2 billion of expenditure coming into the hand of its corporation sole? The Minister of Finance in the law of Trinidad and Tobago stands as the corporation sole. There's a Corporation Sole Act. Why should Tobago not have its Secretary of Finance as a corporation sole? Why should the Secretary of Finance in the island government of Tobago not be the trustee for all lands in Tobago? Why should the equivalent of an Attorney General in Tobago, the Minister with responsibility in Tobago becoming the Secretary for Legal Affairs, why should the Secretary for Legal Affairs, the equivalent of an Attorney General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago in most senses, not have the capacity to make laws? You see, Madam Speaker, the bill before us is a critical piece of law. And Madam Speaker, for the record, this bill, unlike fulminations that I heard coming from the opposition as recently as yesterday, and not going into that, but now in the public domain carried, and I read it in the newspapers, there was this argument presented that somehow this bill before us plopped out of the sky, came like manna from heaven, and that everybody was caught unawares. Madam Speaker, that is the furthest thing from the truth. Because when you look to the bills before us, the bill before us, Madam Speaker, the Tobago Island Government Bill 2021, and we look to the 61 clauses and 2 schedules, they spring exactly from the 2016 legislative proposal from Tobago, the 2018 proposal from Tobago, both of which went to joint select committees, 2 joint select committees. And, Madam Speaker, it brings to life an ambition, a desire, a burning flame of want of this government and of the Tobago House of Assembly Chief Secretary Ansel Dennis, of Mr. London, the previous Chief Secretary, of Mr. Charles, the previous Chief Secretary, of many other Chief Secretaries that have acted, Madam Speaker, that burning desire to give Tobago its fair share, to give it equality, to give it dignity, to give it constitutional anchor which springs into this bill. Now, how does this bill operate with the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago? We have, without reviving debate on another bill, but relevant to this debate, from the constitutional amendments that came, we have a springboard in the Constitution which brings this to life, this bill to life. The springboard comes from a few places. Number one, it comes from the amendment to Section 53 of the Constitution, which allows Tobago, the legislature of Tobago, the power to make laws for the peace, order, and good government of Tobago, Madam Speaker. And that, Madam Speaker, is to be found in this bill when we look to the Tobago Island government in Part 2, but more particularly in Part 3 of this bill, beginning at Clause 12, the Tobago legislature. Clauses 12 to 27 of this bill represent the prescriptive elements that the Constitution allows in the amended version in another law, which says, amend Section 53 of the Constitution, allow Tobago the right and priority and just due of making its own laws, subject to matters prescribed. The matters are now prescribed in this bill, clauses 12 to 27, and in Schedule 2 of this bill. Schedule 2 of this bill says, the list of matters for which Tobago legislature shall have exclusive law-making powers in Tobago. And when you go, Madam Speaker, into Schedule 2 of the bill, and you look at the fact, and I want to focus on this, I want to look at item 17 in the schedule, that Tobago and only Tobago, the island government of Tobago with its own legislature, its own parliament comprising the president and the House of Assembly. Let me repeat that. Madam Speaker, understand what equality looks like in black and white. If the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago has a legislature set up being the president and the Senate and the House, Tobago has its equivalent, the president and the House of Assembly. That is what the Joint Select Committee does. That's what Part 3 of the bill before us does. That's what Schedule 2 does. And item 17 says that that privilege of making law gets to matters such as this: land and buildings, other than land and buildings vested in the state and specifically appropriated to the use of the government, including holding of land by persons who are not citizens. This bill brings to life, Madam Speaker, the ability of the people of Tobago to fix one of the burning issues that have gripped them for centuries, that is rooted in the manner in which we move from a crown colony into the civility of independence and then republicanism, the ability to manage their land titles. Where yesterday we saw the pale reflection of death on the front page of our newspapers. A young man killed in a boundary dispute with a relative, as it is alleged. Madam Speaker, this bill brings to life the ability of the people of Tobago with their own equivalent of an Attorney General to make laws for the peace, order and good government of Tobago. This bill, Madam Speaker, when we get to the position of Part 2 of the bill, Part 2 of the bill is the Tobago Island Government. Madam Speaker, Tobago is being asked via this House of Representatives to receive not a body corporate, as this bill seeks to repeal the THA Act. The Tobago House of Assembly Act creates a body corporate, a statutory entity, a creature of law. This bill asks us to tie it back to the Constitution and instead of a statutory authority to receive a creature of the Constitution of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. The Constitution has a Bill of Rights. The Constitution has remedies. The Constitution sets up the judiciary, the Supreme Court of Judicature. The Constitution sets up the President, Madam Speaker. And when we look to these matters, as today is the International Day of Parliamentarianism, June 30th, today is that day. The day we celebrate parliaments and recognize the significance of parliamentary systems of government in shaping modern societies. Today, this government says, in accepting the recommendation of the Joint Select Committees established to look at Tobago reform and autonomy, today this Parliament, on the day of celebrating International Day of Parliamentarianism, we say, Madam Speaker, elevate that statutory authority from where it is as an act of Parliament created by simple majority, anchored in Chapter 11A of the Constitution with 4 meager clauses to underwrite the Tobago House of Assembly. Take it from statutory authority, put it into the Constitution, bring it to life in this bill in Part 2, Tobago Island Government, Madam Speaker. Let me repeat that. Tobago Island Government. A Tobago Executive Council with jurisdiction for administration, Clause 5. Attached to Schedule 1. How the Prime Minister should meet with the Chief Secretary. Why should the Prime Minister not meet with a Chief Secretary other than in law? The Tobago Island Government to act on behalf of the Government of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Clause 7. Clause 8, the powers of a secretary, materially including a secretary with responsibility for legal affairs. No cabinet in the Commonwealth system is established without a Prime Minister and an Attorney General. And in having a Secretary of Legal Affairs, Tobago gets more than equality of status in lip service and in vague ideas of what equality means, like a nebulous cloud. It gets it in prescriptive law. It gets it in the Constitution, and it gets it in this bill. Why should Tobago not have a chief administrator? Why should that chief administrator not be anchored back to the equality of treatment that Trinidad and Tobago's structures give? Clause 10, administrators. Clause 11, appointment on contract, where we take advantage for the benefit of the administrators to ensure that the SRC has operation, to ensure that the terms and conditions are settled in law and not by vagary. As deputy permanent secretaries, why should Tobago not have its equivalent of a clerk of the house? Look at the service that the clerk of the House and the clerk of the Senate gives to the Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago in the House of Representatives and in the Senate, Madam Speaker, where would we be without the type and distinction of service of Jackie Sampson Miguel or Brian Caesar and all their predecessors? Madam Speaker, this country and this democracy owes a debt of gratitude to people such as those that I have just named, who serve without fear or favor, malice or ill will. Government is government, regardless of who holds the reins, and have served with distinction. Tobago is being asked to have its equivalent, with protection offered in the law. Madam Speaker, look at Part 4 of the bill on finance. Clause 28 of the bill, Madam Speaker. We're talking equality, we're talking dignity, we're talking specifics. Clause 28, establishment of Secretary of Finance as corporation sole. Madam Speaker, that does not exist in the law at present. The Tobago House of Assembly Act, fashioned in 1980, refashioned in 1996, vests its property in the body corporate of the THA. No Westminster system comparator of a corporation sole, no Commonwealth comparator of a corporation sole, as the Minister of Finance in law stands as corporation sole for the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. This law says in Clause 28 that the Secretary of Finance is the corporation sole for Tobago. And Madam Speaker, when we look to Clause 30, the Tobago allocation, 31, the Tobago Fund, 32, the collection of revenues, 33, expenditure, 34, audit of accounts, 35, retention of monies, surrender of surplus monies in Clause 36, 37, the power to borrow, Clause 38, the power to invest, Clause 39, financial rules, Clause 40, description of property, Clause 41, Tobago appropriation bills, 42, contingency funds, 43, fiscal review committee. Let me put it simply this way: Tobago is being asked to receive the very form and fashion and process anchored in the Constitution for money bills, for appropriation. Tobago is being asked to have a fiscal review committee in Clause 43. And Clause 43 sets out there shall be a fiscal review committee, a chairman who shall be Minister for Finance, Deputy Chairman, Secretary for Finance in Tobago, a member by the Tobago Executive Council, 2 members appointed by the Cabinet. I flag now, we wish to amend this. This clause is proposed to be amended at committee stage so that we match up that there will be 1 from Trinidad, 1 from Tobago effectively, alternatives in that regard, and that there shall be 2 other people appointed by the President in effectively sole discretion. In other words, then, there is no preponderance or balance for the government. And what happens with the Fiscal Review Committee? The Fiscal Review Committee shall submit their reports to the Parliament. The Fiscal Review Committee gets, in the desire of bringing equality to Tobago, the ability to present the views and the disagreements, Madam Speaker, the transparency of light into the all 4 context corners, so that the Parliament can see it in broad daylight. No cabinet blocking, no majority will factor. It comes to the people of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, in the Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Who would deny Tobago this? Where is the opposition of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago in promoting this desire? Madam Speaker, Part 5 treats with the transitional provisions. And very importantly, I'd like to point out to every public servant, every person on contract working with the THA, the power of clauses 45, 46, 47, 48. Madam Speaker, there is a statutory recognition of the trade union representation and recognition, keeping in line with the Martha Perch decision. There is a transfer. If you are at the THA, the Tobago House of Assembly, you go across to the Tobago Island government. No loss, no detriment, no battle with the recognition board to have a trade union recognized, but yet preserving the freedom to associate in a trade union if you so desire. Madam Speaker, who would stand in the way of this? Is the question. Why would they stand in the way of this? Is another material question. Who could look at the equality of status and protection of employment positions and deny the people of Trinidad and Tobago the decision that gives Tobago its equality, its dignity, its primacy of presence? Madam Speaker, Clause 53. Again, in transitional provisions, we're dealing with the vesting of powers, rights, and property in the Tobago Island government. Let me repeat that. The marginal note, vesting of powers, rights, and property in the Tobago Island government, not in a body corporate. Let me remind Madam Speaker, in the other bill, which is the companion to this, we seek to entrench by an amendment to section 54(3)(b) of the Constitution, the fact that you cannot interrupt the new chapter 11A, beginning with sections 141A as in Alpha, right down to 141R as in Romeo. You cannot change that without a 3/4 majority of the Parliament. Who would deny Tobago that protection? Why would you deny the people of Tobago that protection, Madam Speaker? Why would you do that? And of all days, Madam Speaker, of all days that the Commonwealth celebrates and recognizes the International Day of Parliamentarianism, June 30th, today. Madam Speaker, I've read the opinions in the newspapers today, the editorials. I've seen the usual parliamentarians, you ought to cooperate and kumbaya your way through this. Come on, let's get along. Madam Speaker, we are in a parliament today. We've suspended a committee stage temporarily. We're introducing a bill here now. What is before us? The committee of the whole parliament. I have put on record that since Tobago was treated in coming in as a crown colony entrant 250-something years ago, becoming a ward of Tobago becoming a ward of Trinidad by the Island Council, the Order in Council of 1889. Madam Speaker, 1889, you know what was going on in the world in 1889? Slavery, oppression, lack of dignity. None of us immigrants and settlers and entrants to Trinidad and Tobago had the rights of standing right where we are. With the freedom that we enjoy today, we celebrate it in movies, we celebrate it in philosophy. Today we can celebrate it in law, in the Committee of the Whole. Because a Committee of the Whole allows the people of Trinidad and Tobago to consider clause by clause, idea by idea. But Madam Speaker, as Attorney General participating as a member of the Joint Select Committee, we asked for submissions on the law. Madam Speaker, I have piloted a significant number of bills in this Parliament. And in that significant number of bills in the Parliament, as Attorney General, as the person with conduct with the law, I have suspended debates, awaited comments from the Law Association, for example, received them in black and white proposed textual amendments, and made the amendments. And today, as Attorney General of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, given that capacity by the Honourable Prime Minister, I call for whatever shape, fashion, text, methodology that anyone can send so that it can be considered, because the room for consideration is at a committee stage, where all 61 clauses in this bill and the 2 schedules in this bill and the clauses in the companion constitutional amendment, together amounting to over 109 sections of proposed law. Madam Speaker, I find it curious, disturbing, unsettling that after 8 years since the Green Paper was issued in 2012, nearly 9 years, Madam Speaker, 8 years, that we don't have a scrap of paper from the opposition of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. You see, Madam Speaker, unfortunately, in the House, in its construction here in this Parliament, the only 2 benches that exist are under the PNM government and the UNC government. Madam Speaker, I have received submissions yesterday coming from Mr. Hochoy Charles and Mr. Farley Augustine, and because there's nobody to present those submissions to this Parliament, I have engrossed them as proposals for consideration at committee stage under the name of the Attorney General. Let me explain that. These are not my proposals on the recommendation of the government. We have taken the voice of people that cannot speak in this Parliament, Farley Augustine, Hochoy Charles, and converted them into proposed amendments for discussion. Let me repeat, for discussion at committee stage. Which other government has ever done that? Which other government has ever done that, Madam Speaker? So wedded are we to the idea of democracy, but democracy has to have an outcome. It's a feeling of safety, of security, the ability to enjoy your country and its rights and privileges within the contract. But Madam Speaker, after 257 years, you have to draw the line. The order in council is 1889. When will that law be repealed? When is it going to be enough? There's a process before us, Madam Speaker. The process involves legislative consideration. We have 41 members of this House. We have a Senate in a bicameral structure that can consider all of the recommendations. Our record demonstrates that we have on many occasions stopped and considered, as we have done already. Today, in moving the Island Government Bill, Madam Speaker, I would like to say this is important law to give Tobago and the people of Tobago, and we in the PNM representing the majority of the people of Tobago, as has been scientifically demonstrated at the polls. We in the People's National Movement say that we want to pass the law and that we want to do it with alacrity. We want to do it with quick but safe measure. We cannot pass law as currently constructed in another bill without the opposition's support. What we can do, Madam Speaker, is to use the 22 votes that we have in the best way possible. I stand guided, Madam Speaker, by the wisdom of the Honourable Prime Minister, who has been in the political arena longer than I have known myself, consciously. I'm now learning what he's forgotten, and I mean that in all honesty. We respect our colleagues in this House. We respect their views. We'd like to respect the opposition more. And that respect would be if they would even bother to condescend to putting their amendments in writing. Having started a Green Paper process, the member for Siparia in 2012. But the member for Siparia, as the only senior counsel in the Parliament of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, in the House of Representatives and in the Senate, is never present and has not a single amendment to make. So I call upon the opposition to provide their recommendations in writing or in discussion. I call upon them to turn up. The first act of starting is to actually get here. Madam Speaker, the people of Tobago deserve support, and we are here prepared to give it to them, and I thank you for this opportunity to contribute.